Chapter 11. And the word was sound. We kept our ritual short this morning. Just a few moments in the sun, a few moments of stillness, and some time with our feet against the earth. We don't need much today, Alako explained as we wrapped up. We're going to be moving all day. We'll probably be doing a lot of walking, right? I asked. Yes, for sure. But we're also going to start the day at a workshop with Puma to get ourselves in alignment before we hit the festival. Oh, all right, cool. And we've got a lot of dancing to do tonight as well, he said with a smile. I laughed back, uneasy about the dancing. We'll see, I said. I might get out there for a little bit. Come on, he said. After a whole week here, you're still self-conscious about dancing? Hey, I said I'd probably get out there, didn't I? He laughed and popped to his feet. Let's get going. It's going to be a great day. As we entered the house, Alako invited me to come up to his room and pick out some clothes for the festival. Do I need special clothes? I asked as we walked up the stairs. I was just going to wear what I've been wearing all week. Shorts and a t-shirt to Harmonia? Come on, man, this is a festival. It's supposed to be festive and fun. This is not a day to wear the same clothes you wear every other day. All right, I'll see what you got. The one duffel bag limit didn't leave me with much room for festival outfits, I said as we entered his room. Why do they do that anyway? Why only one duffel bag? It's just to help get you in the essentialist mindset, so you only pack things you need, he explained. Look around this room. It might seem bare, but I only have what I need. Everything serves a purpose. Everything plays a role in my personal advancement. Nothing to clutter the mind or distract me from myself. I scanned the room and confirmed that the room had absolutely no junk, clutter, or unnecessary items. Lucky for you, the only thing I hold on to forever and never let go of is... He stopped talking for a moment as he slid a large trunk out from the back of his closet. Festival clothes, he exclaimed loudly. Every piece of clothing or accessory I've ever worn to Harmonia is right in here, and it's all yours. Ha! No way. Seriously? Yes, sir. Go ahead and find what works for you. I have my stuff laid out in the other room. I'll be back in a few minutes. I opened up the trunk and was absolutely shocked by what I found. The box was overflowing with some of the wildest clothes I've ever seen. There were vests and shawls and puffy pants, and there were beads and glasses and hats. Some were the earthy shamanic style I see so many people wearing around here. Others were outrageously bright and colorful, and some were downright silly. I was a little confused as I could not imagine in a million years that Alakawa would wear some of these things. I was also very overwhelmed trying to figure out what I would wear. I had never been to a festival like this, and I obviously never wore anything that resembled clothes like this, besides Halloween. I sorted through the items rapidly, holding things up to my body and trying some on for size. Needless to say, I was uncomfortable about this whole situation and wanted so badly to just stick with the black shorts and gray V-neck I had planned to wear originally. But in the end, I squeezed into a pair of tight khaki pants that were the closest thing to skinny jeans I'd ever worn, an unbuttoned vest with no shirt underneath, and a long beaded necklace that almost reached my belly button, a pair of oversized glasses, and a circular brimmed hat with a feather sticking out. I walked over to look at myself in the mirror. Pants 2 sizes small, pale, soft belly showing through my vest, giant sunglasses, huge necklace, and a pseudo-cowboy hat. Oh my God, I whispered out loud. I can't believe I'm going to wear this. A split second later, Alakawa walked in to check on me. As he came through the doorway and saw me looking in the mirror, he stopped dead in his tracks. That's what you're wearing? I think so. Why? No good? He didn't say anything. He just stared. After looking me up and down a few times, he answered with a very unconvincing, I guess that works. Oh, gee, thanks, I answered sarcastically. Okay, here, let me help you out a little, he offered. He threw me a pair of looser linen pants from his regular clothes section. Try these on. I switched the pants while he rummaged through the back of his closet. And this, he said as he handed me a long, dense wooden stick that was sanded and finished. It's my staff. Whoa, really? I asked, admiring the piece. Yeah, he answered. You need something with a little power. I turned it in my hand a few times and looked it up and down. It reminded me of something a wizard would carry. Thanks. This makes me feel a little better, but honestly, I still feel ridiculous. Good. That's the point. This will be good practice in letting go of those insecurities, he responded. It's one of the best things about festivals like this. You can let go of insecurities and release your inhibitions. I'll try my best, I replied half-heartedly as I looked in the mirror. You ever think about what inhibitions really are? Alcoa asked. No, what do you mean? Inhibitions. They don't really make sense, he explained. They are all the things you really want to do or say, but you're too afraid because of how other people might respond. Right? Yeah, I guess so. Think about it. We're so concerned with other people's opinions that we stop ourselves from doing the things we really want. That's why most people use alcohol. It's the liquid courage that helps us break down those barriers. Yeah, except we usually do it in a way that we're embarrassed about the next day, I replied. Yes, exactly. But not today. At this festival, you won't need alcohol to feel comfortable being yourself, or confident doing and saying the things that are most true to you. You'll never be in a less judgmental place than this, he assured me. It's going to be fun. I nodded and smiled, grateful for his wisdom as usual. What are you going to wear? Here, I'll show you. Hang on. He came back a moment later wearing his festival outfit. The clothes were equally outlandish, but in typical Alcoa fashion, he somehow looked way cooler than me. He was also wearing linen pants, but they were more like long shorts, and his shirt was a short sleeve with half buttons up the front. He had multiple necklaces and bracelets, and a hat that was similar style to mine. Even though he pulled off the look on an entirely different level than me, I felt a little better when I saw how similarly we were dressed. Then I noticed one of the necklaces had a fairly large wooden circle pendant. What's this? I asked. That's a piece of Siberian cedar. I got it on a trip there a few years back. Siberia? I didn't know you could travel to places like that. Mm-hmm. We have our ways. I was there for several months living in the forest among the ringing cedars, as they're called. It was an important period of my life. Well, what's it mean? The necklace. Siberian cedar is believed to have powerful healing properties and help people access their fullest power. This is one of my most sacred items. Do you think it really works? Mm-hmm. I know it works. How do you know? Because I make it so. I gave a look of confusion. You can make any item sacred, he explained. For this specifically, it is symbolic of many things. It represents the man I want to be, the son, the brother, the leader, and the teacher. It reminds me of how to live impeccably, like Jaguar, in all of my doings. These are feelings that I've learned to identify very specifically inside my being as one singular vibration. And this piece helps me tap into that vibration with just a single glance. He picked the piece of cedar off his chest for a moment and looked at it. This is important to understand, he continued. It's not about whether or not it, quote, works by giving you any special powers, although that's very possible too. Instead, it's about using the item as a symbol to unlock the infinite powers that are already inside and trying to find their way out. I replied. Where would I find an item like this? You don't find it. It finds you, he answered as he turned away. And for the show tonight, I have this. He stepped back into the other room for a second and came back holding a fur jaguar print shawl with a hood shaped like an open jaguar's mouth roaring with his face inside. In the center, it clipped together on his sternum with one large glowing green crystal as the button. The fur is not real, obviously, but this is what I wear every year to help me tune into the beat of Jaguar Heart. Like the cedar, this costume symbolically helps me embody her spirit, but in more of a fun, festive way, he explained. When you see me wearing this, you know I'm having a good time. Wow, that's a serious piece, I answered. I never would have guessed you're such a big festival guy. Big festival guy, he replied. It might seem silly, but these events are important to the collective energy. Dedicated time to leave normal life behind and come together purely for the purpose of connection and community. The normal structure of life and parameters of society fade away to open a new container of possibility. Without this, we lose ourselves and each other. I watched Alcoa carefully placing some items in his bag as he spoke. Come on, let's get going. Also, make sure you have some clothes you can wear during Puma's class that you can move around in. As we approached the main entrance, I looked down at my outfit again and shook my head. I couldn't believe I was about to walk into a public forum dressed like this. But that all changed once we stepped through the main gates, and I saw that I was one of the most conservatively dressed people here. The area inside the main gate was flooded with people in the wildest attire I'd ever seen. And it wasn't just the clothes. Some people were on stilts. There were fire dancers, people with hula hoops, and tons of people riding decorated bikes. We turned down a pathway and walked through a maze of tents and camping stations until we finally arrived at Alakawa's camp. We walked into a large roped-off area at the top of the beach that belonged to his group. Tall palm trees shaded the area, with a bunch of hammocks hanging and blankets spread out for lounging. The vibe was inviting, with a few dozen people hanging around chatting and relaxing. I recognized two familiar faces right away, Heyoka and Puma, who were sitting on the ground talking with another man. We walked over and greeted each other with the usual heart-to-heart hugs, but given the occasion, they seemed even a little more sincere today. Garret, this is Sono. He's the DJ I was telling you about. Alakawa introduced me to the other man. Ah, right. The best DJ in the third dimension, I answered. He said that? Sono laughed. That's a lot to live up to. He reached in for a hug. So does that mean you guys are coming to the set tonight? Of course, Alakawa replied. Garret is in for a treat. I think everyone is in for a treat, he answered. You know me, I normally don't want to hype it up too much, but this one is a special set. He kept one hand on my shoulder and turned toward the group. There's a few mixes I plan to work into the set tonight that I've been perfecting for a while now. Sounds awesome, I replied. So we'll be the first to hear them? Well, you and a few thousand others, but yeah, he answered. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts afterward. He shifted his body toward Alakawa. I've been tapping into a creative flow lately that feels different. Something is shifting in the collective consciousness. He looked up toward the sky and slowly moved his head back and forth. The veil is thinning. I feel it. So do I, Alakawa said. And it seems like every artist I know feels it too. Alakawa also turned his gaze upward and outward. We're being granted access to new channels of creative energy. They both paused and nodded slowly with their eyes on the sky. Anyway, Sono continued as he returned to eye level, I'd offer backstage passes for tonight, but trust me, you'd rather be right out in the middle of that floor with everyone else. Thanks so much, I said. I've never been to a show like this before. I'm looking forward to it. Amazing. I can't wait to see you there, he answered as he began to turn away. Oh, one thing, I asked quickly. What does your name mean? Sonolumin? It's short for sonoluminescence, he explained, which is a mysterious phenomenon where light is produced from sound. Interesting. That's what I try to do, you know? I use the sound to create the light, he explained. Well, I try my best at least. I nodded and smiled as he turned and grabbed his belongings. Puma's workshop is starting soon, Alakawa explained. Let's walk over. The group of us and a bunch of others from the camp started filing out together. So is this class going to be like yoga or something? I asked Heyoka, who was the closest person to me on the walk. Kind of, he explained. But a little less stretchy and a little more springy, if that makes sense. It didn't make sense, but I just went with it. Oh, gotcha. Do you take his classes regularly? As much as I possibly can, he replied positively, assuring me I was in the right place. Because we are both part of the shift staff, we have the chance to swap wisdom and teach each other often, which is a huge blessing for me. When it comes to the physical body, Puma carries the code like no one else. Wow, that's a strong recommendation if I ever heard one, I responded. Seems like everyone around here has world-class knowledge and talents. We walked a few steps quietly. I could tell Heyoka was contemplating his response. This opportunity you have here, Garret, is a blessing, he told me in a fairly serious tone. The people you meet here in Okablai are not your typical coaches or online influencers. This is a level of intelligence you find in very few places on this earth. I'm sure you're starting to see this by now, but I think it's important to know that there's still so much more to come. I know, I answered. In some ways it scares me, but I know. We arrived at a large circular ring of hard-packed sand near the top of the beach. It was roped off as a designated space for workshops, with a slightly raised stage in the front for speakers, made of hard-packed sand as well. There were already about 25 to 30 people there, and I could see small groups of people walking over from all sides. It looked like there was going to be nearly 100 people for the class. We laid our bags around the edge and found some space out on the sand as Puma began his opening talk. I brought my notebook and pen, sensing it might be helpful at some point. "We are here at Harmonia to unionize our hearts," he began. "That's what the name means, right? Union of hearts. This is not just the goal this week during the festival, but this is something we are trying to do every single day of our lives, whether we realize it or not." Puma stood tall with his head high, almost like he was looking at something far in the distance, but his eyes were right on us. "Our hearts want to be in sync with one another," he continued. "They crave harmony. They yearn for synchronicity. If we allow this to happen, keyword allow, we'd move through life like a flock of birds or a school of fish. So in tune, we'd become one singular unit of flow." He made a slow wave motion in all directions with his arm. "But let me ask you a question," he said to the group. "How well would those schools of fish or flocks of birds stay in unison if they couldn't all move exactly how they were designed? What if some of them had wings that were pointed a little crooked, or rib cages that were extremely compressed, or fins that were stiff and rigid? What if some of them flapped their wings on asymmetrical cadences and cycles? Would it actually be possible for them to come together and synchronize in mind and spirit, if they were not able to come together in body as well? These are questions I want you to think about today and every day when you are in your practice," he told us all. "We all know the role physical movement plays in our individual ability to find rhythm and balance. But what about in the collective? What role does it play there? How might our physical incompetencies be translating into societal disharmony?" Of all the times this week my famous "I guess I never thought about it" tagline was appropriate, none were more fitting than this. Puma was really losing me on this one. He invited us into an all-fours position that reminded me of child's pose, which is one of only 2 yoga poses I know, the other being down dog, and he instructed us to breathe down deep into our hips. This was the first of a series of positions he referred to as decompressive, informing us that at the root of virtually every problem in a person's life, you'll find a compressed spine. For about 20 minutes, we moved through a sequence of light rocking drills and slow breathing exercises, all while he continued to blend his movement instruction with esoteric and somewhat wild opinions on the connection of movement to everything else. When we decompress our spine and align our rotary joints, our body can find the room it needs to rotate in its sacred spirals, creating waves of pressure that move us through time and space in accordance with our divine nature. He instructed us to roll onto our backs and pull our knees towards our chest, breathing low into our hips. "When we find this alignment, we will know," he continued. "Our spine and limbs will begin to transmit these pressure waves in the same geometrical patterns and shapes we see in all motion of the universe. Soon, it will become clear that movement is actually math." It was at this moment I realized that Puma must have already taken some festival drugs. The next move he had us do were called fetal rolls, as we alternated side to side, pulling our limbs in tight to our body in a crisscross pattern, like a child in the womb, activating our innate security system, as he called it, the primordial position of safety and healing. On the last fetal roll, he invited us to lay on our side and hold it for as long as felt right. As I lay there, I noticed how easily I was breathing and how comfortable my back and hips felt. I felt watery, like a baby, and it seemed like I could lay there forever. After about a minute, an involuntary breath came out of my body that was much deeper than usual. It was like when a baby had just finished a long cry and they were finally calming down. A few rapid inhales, followed by a very long sigh. My body sank into a deep state of relaxation, as if I was drifting to sleep in a puffy bed of clouds, rather than a relatively hard-packed sand. As I sank into this state, I felt an unbelievably satisfying pop in my lower left side that was accompanied by a surge of warmth up my back and down my leg. I let out an involuntary moan of pleasure as the sensation continued to spread around my whole body, like a release of tension that had been building for years. I felt my eyes well up with tears, and a second later those tears started flowing out. For a second, I panicked with embarrassment, but released those feelings pretty quickly and went back to the sensation in my body. I just lay there, feeling completely at peace as tears slowly dripped down my face. At first, I I did nothing. I just laid there in a total state of calm and comfort. Then after a few minutes, I tried to think about how long I must have been holding that tension in my body, and to my surprise, I was instantly taken to a very, very specific moment in my life. As if I was watching a movie, I flashed back about 5 or 6 years to a moment when I was standing in my kitchen making dinner. My wife's phone was sitting next to me, and I heard it vibrate on the counter. The text banner popped up for a moment, and I recognized the name as one of her male coworkers who I'd met on a few occasions. All it said was, "I hope to see you there," followed by a smiley face emoji. It wasn't anything too out of the ordinary, but the way she snatched up the phone so quickly made me ask about it. Of course, she just said it was nothing, that he was just talking about the birthday party we were all going to for their other friend. I was invited to the party too, so I bought the excuse. But only now, right in this very second, was I able to realize that my subconscious detected something more. I sensed the real truth behind her feelings for her coworker. But even more, I could now clearly see the words I chose not to say to her in that interaction, and the dozens of similar exchanges in the coming months. The questions I didn't ask and the boundaries I didn't hold slowly manifested into something much bigger. The obvious being our eventual divorce, and the not so obvious knot of tension at the lower left base of my spine that I've been holding on to ever since that moment. I can't tell you how I'm so sure of this, but I promise I'm 100% positive. It was an unexplainable experience, like a perfectly timed synapse between the body and mind. I relived the moment second by second in full detail. Then, as I continued to lay, my mind fast-forwarded through the next year or so of our life. The fights, the lies, the gigantic wall of tension that was growing between us. A tension that amplified slowly in a mirror reflection of the tension in my back. Like a movie montage, I was able to see this whole sequence in just a matter of seconds. Of course, I'd reflected on these moments many times before, but always from a bitter place of resentment. But now, after the release of tension, I was able to see it for what it was. A sad and painful period of time in which I felt very much like I was on the losing side of life. I never once associated my nagging back pain with this event, but now it couldn't be more clear. I was still holding on to the tension from that very first blip on the radar. I continued to lay in this comforting position, allowing myself to be sad without needing to be angry. The pulling inward sensation of the fetal position made me feel safe, like a crying baby being held in its mother's arms. I didn't want to move. I just wanted to let my head lay on the warm sand and let the tears slowly drip down my face for as long as necessary. So I did, for about 10 more minutes, until I felt a gentle nudge on my shoulder. "Hey buddy, how you doing?" Alcoa whispered. "What? Oh, I'm good," I replied as I rolled over and realized the class was over and most people had started leaving. "Oh shit, I'm sorry." No, nothing to be sorry about. You can lay here as long as you need. I was just seeing if I could support you." I sat up slowly, sand completely covering one side of my body and face. I took a few seconds to regroup and adjust to a comfortable seated position, which felt 100 times easier than usual after those decompression exercises. I was having a crazy, vision or something, I explained to Alakoa. It was all my own memory, but it was so vivid and clear, and I could literally feel the feelings again. "Okay, and how did they feel?" "Well, they felt as bad as they did the first time, but this time I was feeling the pain differently. Instead of being angry and resentful, I was just sad, like I was grieving. It was as if I was feeling the pain for the last time, like it was being released from my body and my mind," I answered in a slightly hazy state. "And my soul, I guess." "Okay, did something specific trigger it?" "Yeah, I felt a pop in my back, the good kind of pop, like a release." "Okay, great. And it was linked to the emotional pain you felt in the vision, I'm guessing?" "Yeah, 100%. I never realized it, but I first started noticing the pain right around that time. But I never once made the connection, and it slowly worsened over the years." "Because the emotional wound was unresolved?" Alakoa asked. "I don't know. I thought it was," I explained. "It was about my wife and our divorce and stuff. I thought I was over it, though. We've been separated for a few years now. I don't really think about it much anymore." "That doesn't mean the wound is healed, my friend. Not one bit," he explained. "Do you want to tell me about it?" I dropped my eyes toward the sand for a few seconds, contemplating how I could explain this to him. Well, remember the other day when I told you about my divorce? How we just sort of fell out of love? Yeah. Well, it wasn't quite that simple. Really? No. I'm shocked, he said in a lovingly sarcastic way. You could tell? Of course. Divorce is never that simple, he replied. I just knew you weren't ready to share more, so I didn't ask. But now I'm ready for the full story. Huh, I don't think we have time for the full story. But to summarize, remember all that stuff about just falling out of love and how maybe we never really were in love in the first place? Yes. Those were actually her words, not mine. That's what she would always say, I explained sheepishly. I didn't feel the same. So she was the one who pushed for the separation? Yeah. She started having feelings for a guy at work, and over the next 6 months, things unraveled. To what extent was her relationship with this guy? I'm not sure, I explained as I felt myself slump. There was an emotional connection growing stronger and stronger. She swore nothing physical was happening, but I never really knew for sure. I know I wasn't getting the whole truth from her, but I don't think I wanted it either. Alcoa didn't speak right away. He hung his head similarly to me, almost like he was paying a token of respect toward me. It hurt, he said as he looked toward me. I shook my head slowly. So fucking bad, man. I can't even tell you how bad it hurt. I know, he answered. I mean, I loved her so much. She always came first in our life. I gave her everything, everything, I said as I felt my eyes starting to well up again. I trusted her. Alakawa rubbed my upper back to console me. There are many lessons to be learned from this, Garret. Someday you will see it all clearly. You'll be thankful even. I promise you. I wasn't so sure that would be the case, but I hoped for it to be. Is there more you'd like to share? He asked. Not about that. No. But I don't really understand how it was all related to my back pain. It's not always easy to understand exactly how or why pain presents itself in our body, he explained. But it's a safe bet to assume that any kind of pain in our physical body is directly linked to our emotional body. Some will go as far to say that it's a mistake to think that the physical and emotional are two different things in the first place. Okay, but like I said, it's not something I even think about much anymore, you know? But the back pain nags me almost every day. Maybe you haven't been thinking about it in your conscious mind, but your subconscious works in mysterious ways, he said. Your body always knows your true feelings, even if your mind doesn't want to acknowledge them. I reached down next to me and pulled out my notebook. Your body always knows your true feelings, even if your mind doesn't want to acknowledge them. I scribbled down quickly, feeling proud of myself for being prepared and ready with my notebook this time. All right, let's go check out the rest of the festival, he said as he slapped me lightly on the knee. As we stood up, I felt an inch taller and in the most upright posture I'd ever felt. My chest was open and proud. I felt light on my feet, but still strong and stable on the earth. It was almost like I was floating. All right, let's do this, I said with playful enthusiasm. Alakawa suggested we walk back to the tent to get a pair of bikes, which I realized was a great idea once we rode out into the main area and I really got a feel for the size of the festival. Whoa, I said. Right? He replied. I told you this event was epic. I was in awe of the magnitude of the setup. There were giant tents, musical stages, floats, exhibits, and thousands of people walking and biking around. Where do we even begin? I asked. Wherever you want, he laughed. But since we already did a workshop and we're going to a show tonight, why don't we check out some of the art exhibits? Sounds good to me. We rode out onto a large, naturally hard-packed sand area of the beach. I don't know why, but this beach was astronomically wider than the rest of the beach areas I had seen this week. I guess this is why they chose this spot. There were art exhibits spread all around. Some were large wooden structures and statues. Some you climb or walk into. Others were driving on wheels like parade floats. From the few pictures and videos I've ever seen of Burning Man, this seemed very similar. We took a very indirect path toward the center of the festival, checking out various exhibits and connecting with the other festival goers. The energy was so welcoming and loose, we were in no rush at all, with plenty of time to connect with the others. Eventually, we found our way to the center where there were a few massive structures. The first one I noticed was an enormous spine that had to be at least 50 feet tall. At the base of the spine, inside the pelvis, was a large, roaring bonfire. This is the Vertebra statue, Alako explained. It's a permanent structure. It represents the 33 heroes who volunteered themselves to slavery for the rest of us to be able to establish this great nation of freedom. Wow, it's massive, I replied. There are 33 vertebrae in the human spine, and each hero has one of the names engraved. We honor them greatly, as they are the reason we are here today. And what's the fire for? The fire burns at the base as a symbol of safety and protection for everyone in Okoblaya. It burns year-round. Can we get closer? I asked. Yeah, let's go up. We walked over and I stared up in awe. It was easy to see the care and detail that was put into this construction. There were about 20 or 30 people admiring the work as well, and periodically people would walk up, kneel before the fire for a few moments, and then throw something into it. What are they doing? I asked Alakawa. It's a Harmonia tradition. Every year, the people of Okoblaya are encouraged to visit the exhibit during the festival and participate, he explained as he took a sheet of paper from a table nearby. What you do is write down one thing you've done this year that was honorable and noble, something you are proud of, but only you know about. Then you say a prayer and throw it into the fire. As he explained, I watched an elderly couple kneel down and offer their paper to the fire. It was obvious that they took great pride in this ritual. This is how we prove to them that they made the right decision. We live with the same integrity and dignity as they did, and keep their spirit alive. He then crouched down to the ground and began writing on the paper. Once he was done, he walked up and knelt before the fire, holding the paper to his chest and eyes closed. After a few moments with his head bowed forward, he lifted it, folded the paper, and tossed it into the fire. When he got back to me, I asked, "What did you write?" "That's between me and them, my friend," he replied in his usual stoic fashion. I watched several others go up and perform the same ritual, each in their own individual way, but all with a great sense of honor. I was beginning to really admire the way the Okablo people held their traditions with so much reverence. They never just went through the motions like myself and many people I know do on Christmas and Easter and things like that. When they come together for these commemorations, they are fully invested into the process and the rituals. It's like the traditions actually go stronger as time goes on, instead of getting watered down and commercialized, which I guess should be how it works. We left our bikes down and began walking toward the next exhibit. I was perplexed at what this one was, as all I could see was a gigantic baby statue, lying in the same fetal position I was just in a short time ago. It was as big as a school bus, probably 2 or 3 actually, and I could tell it was hollowed out by the people walking in and out of a doorway near the back of one of the legs. Aside from the oddity of the gigantic baby statue, what was more peculiar was the fact that it had 3 eyes. 2 of them were normal eyes in the normal spot, and those ones were closed as if the baby was asleep. Then it had a 3rd eye right in the middle of the other 2, slightly higher up on the forehead. This one was open, and I could see people putting something through this open eye. We were getting closer, but I couldn't even begin to guess what was going on in here. "What's this all about?" I asked Alakawa. "This is another ritual piece. I love this one." "What is it?" "It's called Wankanyeha, which is a word our ancestors used. It translates to sacred little ones. It's meant to symbolize the new children that will be arriving earthside into Okoblaya this coming year." "Okay, and why does it have 3 eyes?" "That's the 3rd eye, which represents the chakra center right in the middle of your forehead. This is where your pineal gland is located. The 3rd eye sees all, and it's a direct portal to receive Primordial Code." "What are people putting in the eye?" "Well, it's a ritual similar to the last, except this time you are encouraged to share a piece of wisdom you've received this past year. Something you unlocked on your own, whether through trial, triumph, pain, or pleasure. Something you want to pass to the next generation. Something you wish you knew sooner," he said as I watched a woman slip a piece of paper through the eye and kiss the baby on the forehead. Think of it like little nuggets of wisdom being directly uploaded into the consciousness of the child. Okay, I get it. Pretty cool. And what about the doorway in the back? Why are people going in and out?" This is why I love this one," he answered with a smile. "Because instead of burning in the fire, there's a volunteer inside who takes the little pieces of paper and hangs them up all over the walls, so we can go in and take the wisdom for ourselves as well." "Oh, wow, great idea." "Yeah, I could spend hours inside. Sometimes I'll come back to this exhibit 2 or 3 times to absorb as much as I can. What's also cool is that at the end they save them all and publish them in a book. I have the book for every year I've been here. I pick them up and thumb through them often. Brilliant, I said. Are you going to submit something? Of course. And so are you, he answered. Go grab some paper and let's sit for a few minutes. I walked over to grab the paper, now a little nervous to be participating. What the hell was I going to write? I don't have any secret wisdom to share. I'm a total newbie. We sat down in silence, both staring off into the distance and contemplating our submissions carefully. I tried to think of anything that could possibly qualify as a nugget of wisdom, but was coming up totally empty. Before I came here this week, I never once meditated or journaled or prayed or anything like that. I don't analyze and reflect on every little thing in life like they do here. For God's sake, my tagline is, I never really thought about it. That's it, I thought to myself. If there's anything I've learned this week, it's that everything has a deeper meaning. Everything. Even the littlest things seem to come with a valuable lesson if you look for it. There hasn't been one thing more profound for me this week than that simple concept. I put the pen to paper and wrote my submission, and almost immediately following, Alakoa wrote his. Well, since these ones are getting hung on the wall and put in a book, I guess they aren't private, I said. Nope, this wisdom is meant to be shared, my brother. So why don't you share yours first, I suggested. Okay, he answered, but I'll have to give a little context. Please do. So the other day I gave you a little backstory that you so eloquently summarized into a few distinct chapters of my life. I think you said, lifestyle medicine practitioner turned investigative journalist / documentary producer turned human advancement strategist. Remember that? Yeah, I answered. Well, like you, there's more to it, he explained. See, when I decided I was going to start making films, it was a really wild idea. I had no experience in any sort of art like that, and I was already deeply immersed in separate work. I wasn't a filmmaker or a storyteller, you know? So the idea of stepping out into something so different and risky was really scary, and there were a lot of outside influences that had to be overcome. Really? It's hard to imagine you being afraid of something like that. Plus, you said it was a big hit, right? Yeah, but there was no way of knowing for sure it would be. I was confident I could create valuable work, but it's art. It's subjective, right? It's extremely difficult to put yourself out there for everyone to judge. There will always be critics. Okablaya has film critics? I asked jokingly. Listen, Garret, it doesn't matter where you are. It's still possible to make a shitty film that people don't like. We both laughed out loud. So what does this have to do with your nugget of wisdom? I asked after the laughter stopped. Well, this was several years ago now, but I finally started understanding the lesson just this year, now that I've committed to making more film. Especially with this next one, he answered. You see, I'm learning that the more afraid I am of the work, the more important it is for me to do it. How so? I asked, not totally sure I understood. Well, like I said, it's art, right? And by making it, you're opening yourself up to the world to be judged. So the more you truly create from your soul, and the more the work represents you and your deepest beliefs, the more vulnerable you feel. And as you can imagine, that comes with a hefty dose of fear. If the work wasn't really me, I wouldn't be afraid. But because the work is authentic and pure, I get terrified. And the more terrified I am, the more confirmation I get that this is the work I'm supposed to be doing. I answered. So it's like the fear is a gauge, or a meter or something, right? Yes, exactly. And the more you don't want to do it, the more important it is that you do. Bingo, he said with a big smile, as he turned his piece of paper toward me so I could see black ink letters that read, the further you want to run away from the work, the faster you should be running toward it. Of course, he put it more eloquently than I ever could have, but I was proud of myself for actually being able to follow his thinking. And I've been feeling it more than ever since we met with Chief the other day. This film takes the cake, he finished. I looked down at my paper, and now that I was about to share, a huge wave of insecurity swept over me. Let's hear yours, he invited. Mine needs some context also, I began nervously. Sure, go ahead. Well, I've probably learned more about life this week than the last 5 years combined. And honestly, that's kind of embarrassing, you know? So when I started to think about what to write, I was thinking about my tagline. You know, I never really thought about it, he finished for me with a smile. Yeah, that, I replied sheepishly. I know it's kind of a joke, but it's also true. I never really think too much about things. the big things or the little things. I'm kind of just moving through life in a daze. I don't really analyze the deeper meaning or question what I'm told, I shared. Interesting observation, Alako said. So what did you write? I held my paper toward him to read it. There are always lessons, even in the little things, he read out loud. I don't know, I replied. It seemed good when I was writing it. I'm still new to this whole wisdom stuff. Stop, he said as he put his palm up toward me. It's perfect. I looked down at the paper and smiled. Thanks. We walked up to the Wankaneha exhibit and took a minute to admire the handiwork. The piece was beautifully sculpted, and the child's limbs were folded perfectly into the crevices of its torso, giving the image of complete and total peace. I walked up to the third eye opening, where just the very bottom was reachable, placed my hand on the baby, took 3 deep breaths, and slipped the paper through the opening. After Alako took his moment to honor the tradition as well, we walked around back and entered through the hidden doorway. There were thousands of little pieces of paper tacked up along the walls, which were entirely made of corkboard. There was a warm, glowing reddish light, just bright enough to read, and the low pulsing audio of a heartbeat playing lightly in the background. There was no possible way to read them all, but we slowly paced up and down, scanning the walls for the ones that stood out the most. I like this one, I shared with Alakoa. Paradise is not a place, it's a perspective. Yeah, that is good. I like this one too, he answered. You are the creator of your life, not the controller. True creation requires one to release the need for control. Yeah, that is good, I replied, noticing that these quotes were really landing for me, knowing that each of these has a significant real-life context behind them, just like ours. We continued scanning the walls and swapping favorites. Oh, listen to this one, I said in a tone that implied it was one of the best so far. It says, always make today better than yesterday, and you'll guarantee tomorrow is better than today. Whoa, that's deep, he replied playfully. I might have to read that one a few times. I chuckled as I moved on. It was amazing to see how Alakawa, who I viewed in my mind as some kind of flawless superhero when I first arrived, has continued to become more and more human as the days have gone, but in some weird way that actually makes him seem more heroic. Here's one. All that which you desire, you deserve, Alakawa shared. So simple and so true. Oh, this is another good one, I said to him. It says, praying doesn't make your dreams come true. Actions make your dreams come true. But praying makes your actions come true. And just as I finished saying that one, I realized that I was at the end of the messages. There was a lady standing at the end, pinning some of the latest entries on the wall. As I looked up toward her hands, I saw my note had just been hung up a few moments ago. There it was. There are always lessons, even in the little things. The sensation of seeing something I created up on the wall was surreal. In some way, it almost felt like I wasn't just some newbie floundering around some strange land anymore. I felt initiated. And in that moment it dawned on me that it would be printed in the book afterward, and a piece of my soul will be tied to Okablaya forever. After a couple of hours touring the festival on bikes and taking in the sights and sounds, we headed back to the camp. Similar to this morning, there were a few dozen people hanging out and socializing. Like us, some seemed to be coming in for food and rest, while others were on their way back out for workshops, shows, etc. I went right over to the table of food and helped myself to yet another meal of the freshest and most delicious food I've ever eaten. Alako had disappeared somewhere in the camp, but I knew he was around. I looked across to the far side of the tent where I saw a group of people socializing and lounging. A few were eating, others were leaning against the palm trees dozing off, and some lay with their feet up on the trunks. There were a few swaying back and forth in hammocks, one of which was a beautiful woman strumming a guitar and singing lightly. That's exactly where I want to be right now, I thought to myself as I walked over with my plate of food and found an open spot on a blanket in the shade, not far from the musician. I ate my food slowly, taking in the beauty of the moment. A gentle breeze blew in intermittently, and the mix of shade and sun from the palm trees' shadows kept a heavenly temperature in the air. The musician was remarkably talented and stunningly beautiful, neither of which surprised me at this point in the trip, but added a perfect touch to the scene. She wasn't putting on a formal performance, per se. She was in the same chilled-out state as everyone else, talking and chatting casually as she played. After a few minutes of strumming silently, she began singing. It was a song that had 3 simple lines that she repeated in an angelic whisper. When the songs of earth all play in tune, we will dance together. When we harmonize with the sun and moon, we will dance together. I promise you that someday soon, we will dance together. It was a beautiful little hymn, and several others joined in and sang along at certain points, telling me that the song was well known around here. After that song, she placed the guitar down, stood up off her hammock, and walked a few short steps toward me. I froze. She wasn't about to talk to me, was she? There's no way. Hey, do you mind if I grab a piece of that melon you have there? It took me a few seconds to process what was happening before I looked down at my plate, which still had a few pieces of melon on it. Oh, sure. Yeah, of course. Here. I answered as I picked up the plate and held it out to her. Thank you so much. I was getting a little thirsty during that last song. Take as much as you want, I invited, keeping the plate held up. She took a few more and remained close by as she ate them. That song was beautiful. Did you write it? I asked, using the opportunity to engage a little more. No, not that one. That's a traditional Ocablo hymn, she explained. It's one of my favorites. Oh, I see. I really enjoyed it. Oh, thanks, she said with a big bright smile. I'm Citrine, by the way. I'm Garret, I replied. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks for the melon. I'm going to keep playing for a while. Great, I replied as I placed my plate down next to me and laid back flat on the ground. I tucked my bag behind my head as a pillow and let my eyes shut lightly. I didn't really fall asleep, but I drifted lightly in and out, enjoying her music and the vibe. Like Alacoa, she played many songs we all know, and several I had never heard. I was sort of in between dream and awake when all of a sudden I heard a set of chords that made me sit straight up. I listened for a few moments to be sure, but yes, she was playing an abysmal charisma song. Of all the strange things going on around me this week, hearing that band in this place is the most bizarre of all. I let out an audible laugh, to which she replied with a smile while she played, amused at my reaction to the song. The second the song ended, I asked, You know what biz is? Even more surprised at that idea than I was when Alacoa revealed the same thing. Of course, she laughed. They actually came here for a period of time. That's how I got to know them. My friend Alacoa worked with them. I know. Alacoa told me. He's my mentor this week. He's around here somewhere. Oh, no way. You must be having a great week. 100%, I responded. Challenging, but great. She nodded and smiled as she picked her guitar back up and started tuning it. I desperately wanted to keep the conversation going, so I quickly tried to find something to say. That was a great rendition, I said. I'd never heard an acoustic cover of that song before. I like it better, honestly. Thank you, she replied. There's something about the acoustic version of a song. I don't know what it is, but I always like them better. I know what it is, she replied as she continued tuning her guitar. You do? I asked, a bit surprised in her confidence that she knew why I liked acoustic music so much. It's because the acoustic version is stripped down to its most pure state. No fluff, no filler. Just the artist and the song in its most raw form. You feel the emotion behind the lyrics and the energy of the melody. Nothing unnecessary. Nothing extra. Wow. Yeah, you're right, I responded. I never really thought... I guess I always knew that, but never really put it into words the way you just did. But you're 100% right. That's why the acoustic guitar is one of my only possessions, she explained, as she slowly started strumming a tune. Are you one of those essentialists like Alacoa? And I wouldn't have it any other way, she shared. Just me, my van, and the most important things in my life. That's it. It's like the acoustic version of life. The acoustic version of life, I repeated back in a whisper, nodding slowly. I like that. Yep, that's me. I want to experience this life in its purest form. Raw, unfiltered, and authentic. Nothing to interfere with what I'm really feeling. Nothing to hide me from my thoughts. Nothing disguising me from who I really am. Nothing extra. She sunk back deeper into her hammock and gave the guitar one long strum, confirming that it was now properly tuned. Wow, that's amazing, I replied. You should see the amount of stuff I have in my house. It would make you sick. Just like it's making you sick, she replied. I watch the people of your land and it amazes me. They fill their homes with stuff, and more stuff, chasing some dream of a paradise of possessions. And then when they realize they still aren't happy, they say things like, there has to be more to life than this. unable to see that it's not more that they need, it's less. If they want to be happy, there has to be less to life. She was silent for a few moments while she plucked the guitar strings. I thought about my house back home. It was a fairly large house, so it didn't feel super cluttered, but when I thought about the amount of belongings I had, not just in the house, but in the garage, the basement, the attic, and the shed, and each of these half dozen or so large closets, I suddenly felt the true weight of this stuff and how it affects my psyche. It wasn't something I thought about on a day-to-day basis, but when I paused to think about how many possessions I had and how rarely I even touched 99% of them, it did make me feel sick. That's the paradox of abundance, she continued. Everyone thinks abundance is measured by how much you have, when really it's measured in how little you need. I grabbed my notebook out of my bag and wrote that down. My first non-Alacoa quote of the week. Abundance is not how much you have, it's how little you need. The depths of simplicity are endless, she continued. It's challenging in the most beautiful way, and there are opportunities to rediscover yourself day after day. You can't lose the connection to yourself. There aren't enough distractions. Okay, I'm sold, I said jokingly. I'll be doing quite a bit of cleaning when I get home. That's great to hear, she said, as she started playing the guitar a little louder. Enjoy the purge, my friend, and returned to her impromptu concert. A few songs later, as I laid and relaxed on the ground, I felt the plop of a body next to me, followed by a light slap on the leg. Hey, buddy, how you doing over here? It was Heyoka. I couldn't be better, I answered, not budging from my relaxed supine position. I can tell. I've never seen you so at ease, he said before he leaned in closer and whispered. And I saw you from across the way chatting it up with Citrine, followed by a few playful shoves. Ha, yeah, right. I wish. I answered back low enough not to be heard. She's way out of my league, dude. She's not even in a league. She's out of my dimension. You're acting afraid, he said. Afraid? Come on, stop. I've been rejected by women many times. It's not fun, but I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it. I know you're not afraid she will reject you. That would make perfect sense, he said. Look at her, and then look at you. Wow, thanks for the encouragement, buddy, I replied. It's the truth, but there's a point. You aren't afraid of being rejected. You're more afraid of what would happen if she actually accepted. I paused and looked at her over there playing in her hammock. He was right, but I didn't know why. Maybe you're right, actually, I answered. But why? Because she is a queen, he answered. She is empowered and independent and clear in her ways. She is in tune with her body and her emotions. She is tapped into her gifts. She is authentic and confident and courageous. She embodies the energy of the divine feminine in every way. But those are all things I want in a woman, I answered. No shit. That's what every man wants. But how many men can be a companion to a woman like that? How many men could actually be her king? I guess not many, I replied, starting to see his point. Right. Almost none. Especially you, he answered, either not realizing or not caring that he was borderline insulting me. You are not ready to be a king, which is why you are scared to pursue a queen. Okay, so you're saying that if I went over to her and asked her on a date, she might say yes, but it would be impossible for me to really fulfill her needs, right? There's no chance she would say yes. But overall, yeah, that is the point I'm trying to make. Gee, thanks, I replied. I'm not here to set you up for failure, Garret. I want to do the opposite, and this requires me to be very honest with you. And the honest truth is that you are not yet fit for a queen, he answered. Just take me, for example. I've been with some of the most beautiful women on earth. Women of both body and soul. Goddesses, Garret. Women you could only dream about. You understand? Yep, got it. Women I could only dream about, I answered with a bit of snark. Exactly, he said. But this doesn't happen just because I work up the guts to ask them out. A king is not born by some single act of courage. Kingship is a state of being. He squared himself to me, making sure I was fully engaged in what he was about to say. A king is a king not because he rules over others, but because he rules over his own self. He is the master of, and servant to, his body, his temple, and he offers his physical training not only to himself, but to his future queen. He is a king because he moves forward through life with a penetrating force, executing his actions with integrity and humility. He will not be afraid when the time comes to speak his heart to her. He poked me in the sternum with his index finger. He is impeccable with his word. He is noble and trustworthy. He will commit to his queen only when he knows there are no others. A king honors the essence of the divine feminine and respects her as the life-giving goddess that she is. He does not hold himself any higher or any lower than her. I just tilted my head toward the hammock and stared over at Citrine as Heyoka spoke. She had her eyes closed as she played a soft tune on her guitar, her long, thick brown hair blowing in the breeze like something out of a movie. He was right. I was not fit for a queen like her. Not yet, at least. A moment later, she put the guitar down, stood up, and started walking toward us. To my surprise, she sat down right next to us. I jolted up from laying to sitting and tried to act natural. "What are you guys talking about over here?" she asked playfully as she reached down and took the final piece of melon off my plate. "Oh, nothing really," I said as casually as possible. "Garret was just telling me how attracted he is to you," said Heyoka, to my horror. I was frozen in disbelief. I wanted to crawl into a hole in the sand and never come out. Finally, after the longest 2 seconds of my life, I was able to respond. "Well, no, that's not actually what I said. I mean, I didn't, not say that, but I think maybe he misunderstood me a little," I fumbled. "I was just sharing my admiration of your talents with Heyoka," I said as I turned sharply toward him. "I kind of thought it was a private conversation." "Oh, that's really sweet," she replied with a laugh. "I enjoyed meeting you today as well. Are you going to Sono's show tonight?" "Definitely," I answered excitedly. "Oh, cool. Well, hopefully I'll see you there," she said as she stood up and walked away. I was stunned. I waited for her to be out of earshot, then excitedly slapped Heyoka on his arm. "Dude, did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "She hopes to see me there," I said with playful pride. "That's a good sign." He stared at me with a blank expression for a few seconds before responding. "I wouldn't overthink it." My chin dropped toward my chest, feeling deflated and a little silly. A second later, Alcoa returned. "Where were you?" I asked. "I was talking to Dr. Siri for a bit," he shared, "about the film." He and Heyoka exchanged serious looks with one another, once again making me slightly uncomfortable about this whole film situation. "And?" I asked, prying slightly. He let out a long sigh. "Remember that talk we had yesterday about spiritual warfare?" "Yes." "Well, this film is going to be like the nuclear bomb of the spiritual war," he said as he looked at both of us. "If we actually use it, it's all over." Neither one of us answered. There was nothing to say. Alacoa's words and expressions said it all. "But today's not the day for this," he continued, switching to more of an upbeat tone. "I'm going to go take a dip in the ocean to cool off. Want to join?" "Sure, that sounds good," I answered. "Yeah, I'm in," Heyoka replied, and we all headed toward the water. Okablo Modern Tribal Village is a vision for the next version of Neighborhood Village. A huge step beyond the obvious madness of modern society, but also a progressive step further than what we see in most community living projects. I'm a big fan of all community living projects, anything to try to leave the empire behind and build the new earth. However, there are some subtle yet major differences between most community and co-living projects and the vision for Okablo Village. Most community living projects bring together like-minded people who work together to achieve common goals. And again, this is fantastic and a huge step in the right direction. However, Okablo Village takes these concepts a few steps further. Instead of like-minded neighbors, Okablo is a shared value system. It might not be for everyone, but you'll know that those you choose to live with share your most important values and are willing to stand behind them to the same degree as you. And Okablo Village is not just about working together, it's about relying on each other. That's actually a key principle to the success, aka survival, of a village. Maybe not literal survival as in life or death, but survival of the project and the mission itself. See, in Okablo Village, everyone will play a role. Maybe not a full-time job, but a role nonetheless. The success of the village requires all. Now, that's a topic that can go deep and has a lot of nuance to it, but I'll tell you something. I spent 2 years in Costa Rica working in one of the largest eco-village projects in the world, and one of my roles was doing screening calls with people from all over the world who were looking for a new way of living. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things people were hoping to find was a format in which they had a real role and responsibility in the operation of the community. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case in this particular project, but I bring it up to emphasize the deep, intrinsic desire for humans to rely on each other in their daily lives. So instead of just like-minded people who work together to achieve common goals, Okablo Village is a new type of people, operating on clear principles and shared value systems toward a specific mission as a cohesive unit. And with that, there will be a lifelong learning center, a healing center, a common farm, and of course, a retreat and visitation program so others can learn the Okablo ways. I think it's obvious that this is a long-term vision with a lot more to talk about. But once you're in Club Okablo, you'll have access to a recent webinar about the vision and be in the loop on all updates and how you can be a part of the movement. See you in there. I had no idea what time it was, but I could tell it was getting late into the afternoon because the sun was shifting from its bright yellow shine to more of an orangish glow as it set. We walked down toward the water, then made a left turn and walked up the beach a little more. Let's head up here for a bit. I bet we see some of the others, Alako suggested. We walked up the beach about 10 minutes, and sure enough, there was a group of people down at the water's edge, some of which were sitting on the sand, others were frolicking in the shoreline. I recognized a few faces right away. There was Charlie, who was one of the ones splashing around in knee-high water, and that other girl, Sandra, was down the beach a few hundred feet, just standing at the edge, staring off toward the horizon like a statue. Her mentor was nearby as well, along with a few others I had crossed paths with throughout the week. As we got toward the group, Charlie spotted me and came running over. "Garret," he exclaimed, "get over here." He pulled me in for a hug before he even came to a full stop. "Ah, man, it's good to see you." "Hey, Charlie. Yeah, man, great to see you too," I answered, a little taken aback by his uncharacteristic enthusiasm and cheeriness. "You're having a good experience, I'm guessing?" "Dude, I can't even tell you," he answered. "What a day. That's all I can say. What a day." I smiled big, sensing a tone of joy in his voice that I hadn't heard before, a tone I bet he hadn't heard in many years himself. "You coming in? The water's great." "Yeah, I want to take a dip. Let's do it." I took off my shirt and was about to jump in, but I froze in my tracks as I saw Sandra collapse to the ground and begin weeping uncontrollably. "Oh, shit. Is she okay?" I said out loud. Charlie turned around to see. "Her? Yeah, don't worry. She's all right, man," he assured me. "We're all right. Everything is all right. You see? All is right. We are all right," he emphasized with a circular arm gesture signifying that he was talking about everyone around him. "Everything is right. Everything is exactly how it should be." I just nodded and smiled, realizing that Charlie was still a bit up in the clouds from his mushroom ceremony. I was a little concerned about Sandra. She didn't look good, but I noticed that her mentor and another Okablo girl were now at her side, attending to her. "Come on, let's cool off," he said as he began running toward the water. I ran behind him, high-stepping through the small rolling waves and splashing in all directions. When the water finally reached my thighs, I threw my body forward and dove under an incoming wave, feeling the refreshing water immerse my entire being. It was a moment of pure bliss, and I could tell by Charlie's smile he was feeling the same thing. Like young kids, we ran in and out of the shore break over and over, jumping, splashing, and laughing. There was this remarkable sense of presence and playfulness among the group, a feeling I hadn't felt in decades. Finally, after about half an hour, Alako signaled us to exit the water and get back to camp so we could get ready for the show. Alakoa, Heyoka, Puma, myself, and a few others from the camp walked toward the main stage after a quick change into our most festive attire. The sun had now fully set, and the last final drops of light faded beyond the horizon. As the stage came into view, I didn't need any confirmation that this was the right place. There was a low rumble of music and people filing in from all angles. The lights had a warm, orange glow which jumped off the darkening sky in the background. The energy was buzzing as we approached the entrance, and the anticipation was palpable. The lights shone in a spectacular array of colors, flashing and spinning in all directions, and there were speakers the size of small houses all around playing a low-volume drum beat in the background. "This setup is insane," I said to Alakoa, having to already speak louder than normal. "I know, right? The stage is where it's at. The biggest shows of the night are always here. What's it called again? Amnesia something?" Synesthesia, he corrected me. Yeah, that. What does that mean? Synesthesia is when two or more different senses converge and become one, he explained. When there is no distinct separation between the senses and it all starts to blend into one simultaneous experience. Wow, is that a real thing? Yes, sir. It's a natural phenomenon. Quite rare to experience, but with the light and sound production here, it's about as close as you can get. Okay, well, I'm here for it, I said playfully. Synesthesia, sonoluminescence, I'm down for all the natural phenomena tonight. We were right in the center middle of the arena. The space was jammed, but everyone had enough elbow room to feel comfortable. The crowd pulsated in anticipation. It felt like the place was going to explode. The drum beat in the background increased steadily in volume, causing the volume of the crowd to rise as well, as people began hooting, hollering, whistling, and screaming for Sono to come on the stage. Finally, the lights dimmed, and one long, deep, loud tremble of bass overtook the arena. I could literally feel the sound vibrating through my bones, to which I let out the loudest "woo" I've ever screamed in a public setting. A second later, Sono stepped out on the stage and the place erupted with cheers and applause. He didn't say a word. He just held one hand over his heart and pointed one finger to the sky, then brought it down quickly to tap the first button of the night. Another layer of drum beat kicked in and everyone began bopping along instinctively. This was like 100 times the energy I felt at the drum circle on my first night. After a few moments of progressively building drum beat, the bass volume lowered and a deep voice resonated over the speakers. "In the beginning there was the Word," it said in perfect rhythm with the beat, "and the Word was God." I actually recognize this line from the Bible, I think. I don't know how I know it. It's just one of those famous verses. It wasn't what I was expecting to hear in the opening song of a DJ set, but it blended perfectly into the slow building beat. After a pause, it repeated again, but this time a little differently. "In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was sound." The beat continued building for another few counts. Then the vocals came in again. "In the beginning there was sound, and the sound was God." Now the bass stopped, and there was a long pause of just light percussion to keep the rhythm. "In the beginning there was God," the voice continued, "and the God was sound." With the final words came the deepest, loudest, and most perfectly timed beat drop I've ever heard. Chills ran up and down my spine like a jolt of electricity, and I jumped high in the air where beautiful lights flashed in all directions. The vocals kept repeating the line, "And the God was sound, and the God was sound, and the God was sound," to the beat. This song played on until it blended seamlessly into the next, and the next, and the next. The bass pumped in ebbs and flows with various speed drum beats and percussions layered in, creating a deep and smooth sound I could feel radiating through my bones. The crowd hopped, twirled, and flailed tirelessly. I could feel the ground shaking, and the rhythmic beat felt like it was activating some kind of primal adrenaline response that was taking over my body. I couldn't stop moving. It was almost an out-of-body experience. I stomped, clapped, and spun in all directions, stopping only a few times to offer a quick prayer to Sister Cannabis whenever she found her way into my presence. I floated around grooving alongside everyone and anyone, including some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. No insecurity, no holding back. At one point, Citrine found her way into my space, but I didn't change a thing. I just kept moving and shaking alongside of her without an ounce of fear before she slowly disappeared into the crowd. It was like I was temporarily possessed by the most relaxed, confident, playful, happy version of myself that's ever lived. On a few occasions, I took a mental pause to acknowledge the absurdity of the situation. Here I was, barefoot, in hippie festival clothes, praying to marijuana, and dancing to house music, of all things. If someone had told me on the plane that this was going to happen, I would have laughed right in their face. I made it a point not to spend too much time on these thoughts, just enough to feel gratitude for the way everything has unfolded without missing out on the present moment. The show continued for what must have been 3 whole hours. I felt such release in my body and mind and was overtaken with feelings of love that were so strong I had to hold back not to hug everyone that came near me. Finally, the music began to slow and the lights brightened just enough to see each other fully. I assumed the show was ending, but instead of leaving, everyone stood side by side, draped their arms over each other's shoulders, and began swaying back and forth. I wasn't sure what was happening, but everyone seemed to be on the same page, so I just followed the crowd, literally, and put my arms over the shoulders of the two closest people. Sono then came onto the microphone and said, "Okay, everyone, I want to hear it from the heart," and began leading the crowd through a verse that I instantly recognized from earlier today. Everyone in the place sang in unison, a loud and heartfelt chorus. When the songs of earth all play in tune, we will dance together. When we harmonize with sun and moon, we will dance together. I promise you that someday soon, we will dance together. We repeated the verse 3 times before Sono called out to the crowd, "One last time," to which we happily obliged at even a louder volume than the first 3. As our voices faded on the last line, the crowd gave its final hand to Sono Lumen, who I can now confirm is the best DJ in the third dimension. As we walked out of the arena, I was still flying high. "Dude," I shouted to Alakawa, "that was in-freaking-sane. Crazy." Alcoa laughed hard as he replied, "Hey, that's why house music is the universal language." "Man, I feel incredible right now," I shouted with a huge smile, walking with a hop in my step like I was still dancing. "Come on, let's head down to the water," he said with a tilt of the head and pointed a finger in the direction of the beach. As we stepped onto the beach, I could see the moonlit water in the distance. The silver light danced off the gently rippling waves, and the cool sand patted our steps. We stopped when we reached the water and stood at ankle depth. "Oh my God," I said as I tilted my head toward the sky. "Look at those stars." Alcoa looked up and said, "Beautiful, right? They never get old." I kept looking up, slowly scanning side to side, admiring the vivid brightness. As I gazed, I did what I had now done too many times to count, and paused for a moment of reflection. When I zoom out to really witness the transformative journey of the past week, I'm left nothing short of dumbfounded. What also sank in for me at that moment, unfortunately, was that the adventure was now coming to an end. "I don't want to go home," I said to Alakawa in a somewhat exaggerated manner, although I truly meant it. "This is where I need to be. You, Heyoka, Charlie, Puma, Citrine, you guys are my people." "Citrine?" he asked. "You know her?" "Yeah, I met her today at the camp, and then we danced a little at the show," I explained. "I'm pretty sure we had a moment." "You and Citrine had a moment?" he asked in bewilderment. "How do you know?" "What do you mean, how do I know? I felt it, man. That's what a moment is. You just feel it. And you think she felt it too?" "Yeah, she definitely felt it," I replied. "Pretty sure, at least." Alcoa responded. "I'd say it's very unlikely." "Whatever, forget the citrine part. That's not the point," I snapped back. "The point is, I belong here. I feel like I found my place." "Well, it sounds like you'll be back pretty soon," he replied with a pat on my back. "For sure, man. I'm answering this call. Nothing would stop me from getting back here." "I'm excited to hear that," he replied. "Just make sure you come ready. The Harmonia High is a real thing. I still get it every year. But you have to remember that shift is going to be pretty intense. We'll have time for fun, don't get me wrong. But if you're going to be in, you got to be all in." No, I know. I'll be ready, don't worry. When I get home, I'm going to figure out the logistics and start preparing right away." "Great." We stood a little longer, gazing in awe around the mildly illuminated beach while the breeze gusted on and off. I felt like it was a perfect moment to express my gratitude to Alakawa for everything he has done for me this week. "Man, I have to say, you really taught me so much this week. I'm super grateful that we got teamed up together," I expressed openly. "It was the perfect fit." "I agree, Garret. I'm grateful as well," he said in a way that assured me he truly received my compliment. "I've learned a lot also." "Seriously?" I responded with a laugh. "What the hell did you learn? How to be an average white guy from Middle America?" He let out the loudest laugh I've ever heard from him. Now that's pretty funny. But no, seriously, I'm a big believer in a very popular phrase that says, "When one teaches, two learn," he shared. "I always learn from my students, more than you probably think." "Well, I have to say you're the best teacher I've ever met. I've never felt such a thirst for knowledge as I feel right now. It's like this crazy string of coincidences that led me to you. But it feels like it was designed to happen exactly this way, you know?" "I do. In fact, there's another very well-known proverb that I also believe in very deeply, he answered. It says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Whoa, I replied. That's so spot on. That's exactly what it feels like. You were ready. I know you felt like a fish out of water most of the week, but I can see growth happening at a rate that I don't see too often, he explained, resulting in a surge of pride through my entire body. Wow, thank you. That really means a lot to me. He turned to face me, stuck out his hand for a firm handshake, then pulled me in tight to his chest for the least uncomfortable man-to-man hug I've ever felt. Without a touch of insecurity, I embraced him with a firm squeeze and held him much longer than usual. Thank you, I whispered near his ear before pulling back and exchanging a few pats on each other's shoulders. Of course. We turned and started walking back toward the mainland. It's super late, he said. Tomorrow we'll take the day to just relax and restore before I take you to the airport. The evening outbound is your best option. I'll make sure you're on it. It'll give us most of the day to just chill. And that's exactly what happened.